The Premier League is officially over. After 10 months and 38 match days, Manchester City have been crowned as champions of England for the third time in a row. And even though the title race didn't come down to the last match day, we still had a lot of insanity going on this season. Predicting all of it before the start would be almost impossible, which is why it's so fun to look back at what we thought would happen all the way back in August. This will be the follow-up video to my EPL predictions where I react to my original predictions and see how they have aged. Starting off with the best at being the worst, the teams who won't be with us next season, the relegation zone. Bournemouth, Leeds and Brentford. Okay, so first off, I wanna apologize to Bournemouth, 1 for butchering their name and 2 for putting them dead last just based on what I saw everyone else do. They proved me wrong and stayed up, finishing 15th. Leeds, on the other hand, landed exactly where I predicted them, 19th, and having the worst defense of the league, and all the deficiencies we saw from them last season, but even worse. Then, my statistically worst prediction, a full 11 places off as I predicted Brentford to relegate in 18th, and not only they survived, but then finished 2 points shy of European football in 9th. So good job Brentford, you impressed me. Nottingham Forest, Fulham and Everton. Forest survived just slightly more comfortably than I expected them to, in 16th, 1 place above what I predicted. In another shock for me, Fulham contested European spots for most of the season but ended up in 10th, still 6 places above what I predicted. Everton were even closer to going down than I expected but ended up finishing 17th instead of 15th, only surviving thanks to a Abdoulaye Doucouré winner in the last match day. Still, just like I predicted in my video, and usually the bigger teams come in clutch in difficult situations, so that's why I don't think Everton are going down this season. Moving a bit up in the standings, we have Southampton, Crystal Palace and Brighton. I expected nothing of Southampton and they still managed to disappoint me as they finished dead last and relegating before everyone else, a full 6 places lower than in my video. Crystal Palace did about what I expected, mid-table, nothing great but not shockingly bad either, 2 spots away what I said originally. In another shock for me, Brighton qualified for the Europa League in 6th place, surpassing my expectations by 6 slots, and their team was honestly fantastic and I feel awful for underestimating this side, who were easily one of the most fun teams to watch this season. Wolves, Leicester and Aston Villa. Wolves are very similar to Crystal Palace for me. In fact, where I expected them to be and where they actually finished is exactly the opposite. While Palace slightly overperformed, Wolves underperformed by 2 spots compared to my predictions. In another awful call, I predicted Leicester to have an okay season finishing in the middle of the table, but they ended up a full 8 spots lower and relegating in the last match day as one of my worst predictions yet. Aston Villa surprised everyone as under Steven Gerrard they looked like they were to fight for survival, and yet Unai Emery took them all the way up to 7th, taking the Conference League spot and surpassing my expectations by 2 spots. The 8th team who will barely miss on European competition will be West Ham. West Ham disappointed pretty much everyone this season. At some point it looked like they were gonna go down, but they didn't go that far and turned it around in time and finished 14th, 6 places below what I expected. With the team they have, they should have done a lot better, but at least they'll be playing in a European final again after a long time. In 7th place, and this is a controversial one, I have Chelsea. When talking about my predictions, I saw many people mention how little I expected from Chelsea, and yet they actually did worse than I predicted them to. Actually, a lot worse. My call that Tuchel would be sacked through the middle of the season as the team collapsed and whoever took over wouldn't be able to turn the ship around ended up being also true. So even though I was wrong by 5 spots, this is still my favorite prediction I made. Now the 6th place team is gonna be Newcastle. I remember having Newcastle higher than most people as I thought their last part of their campaign last season was really good, and if they kept that form, they could make European football. What I did not expect was them finishing 2 spots higher, getting into the Champions League. Amazing season by Newcastle. Shoutouts have to be given to players like Pope, Trippier, Botman, Bruno Guimaraes, Almiron, Callum Wilson, and Isak, who finally found his form, and obviously Eddie Howe. Now in 5th place I have Arsenal. I predicted Arsenal to once again bottle top 4, but they ended up overperforming and instead they bottled the league and finished 2nd after leading through most of it. I see a lot of people talking about how this season was a failure for Arsenal as they got no trophies by the end of it, but it's important to remember where they were at before, and I think looking back at predictions is the perfect way to do so. Nobody expected Arsenal to win anything, and yet they got back in the Champions League after 7 years of absence, and they contested a title with this unstoppable City team. It's obviously disappointing and Arsenal are still chokers, but at least they surpassed mine and everyone's expectations. Now on to the top 4, and the team I have in the 4th position is gonna be Manchester United. I believed in the Ten Hag project to bring back United where they belong, and it wasn't brilliant, but they got 3rd even with so many injuries along the way, and they'll be back in the Champions League next season. So my 3rd team is actually gonna be Liverpool. Oh boy. I didn't expect Liverpool to do that amazing this season, but not making top 4 was for sure a disappointment. Sure, I could blame it on the injuries, but the thing is, pretty much everyone in Liverpool underperformed. The team that almost got a quadruple last season had the best players in their position all across the board, and this year we saw none of that. Players like Van Dijk, Fabinho and Thiago looked like ghosts of their former selves. Salah had a good season but still went through bad spells and missed a lot in front of goal, just like Darwin Núñez, who was our big signing, and even though he hasn't been as bad as people online make it out to be, he still hasn't been worth what we paid for him. Trent also had an awful start, but he reinvented himself after the World Cup. That last round of good results got us all the way up to 5th in the Europa League, where we'll be playing next season. Disappointing, but it could have been a lot worse. In 2nd place, I'm gonna have Spurs. Okay, but hear me out. Actually no, forget it. I must have been drunk or high on something non-prescribed, because looking back I still have no idea why I had Spurs this high up. Sure, they underperformed, and getting 8th, missing out on European football was worse than most people expected, but 2nd? Runners up? Silver medal? Even if Brentford was statistically the worst, this is in my opinion my worst prediction this season. And that leaves us with only one team, of course, it's Manchester City. Yeah, this was obvious. And with that we conclude my reaction to my Premier League predictions. What did you think of them? How have your predictions aged? Let me know right down in the comments. I'll be seeing you guys next time.